The Devil and Us, a memoir of you and me. Everything you think you know about evil is wrong. Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's 11:31 a.m. my time, which is Mountain Time in the south of Costa Rica in the Talamanca Mountains. And we're going to continue with our series on the devil and this theological construct and its physical, psychic, and spiritual reality, if any, as it's been explained to us. And I would urge you to listen to the various parts of this presentation more than once, because it's very, very dense. It's coming from my book, The Devil and Us, a memoir of you and me, as we come out of 2,000 years of Christendom, some 3,500 years of Judaism, and about 1,400 years of Islam. And we are coming out of these doctrines now, okay? And this is why I feel it's important to start talking about these things. So this doesn't mean that these doctrines did not have purpose or function or role in the time that they existed. They did, and they still do today. But as a general rule, these things are not going to survive the vibrational change on the planet, the transition we're going through. And in many ways, because they hold on to certain concepts that we have to let go of to move into the future. And one of them is the devil. Okay. So previously we were talking about the God as the devil as being representative of the law. Okay. So if you find any people in a religious context immersed in law and always talking about law, you can be fairly certain that they're working quite closely with this negative principality, who is a divine being, by the way. Okay? So I have to repeat that. The devil is a divine being. He's not an aberration. He's not antagonistic toward God. He is, in fact, a divine being. So the law is simple. If you play with the energy, you entrap yourself in a myriad of chattering voices. And you can see people like this, okay? You see them on the street, the drug addicts and things like this. This is the collapse of consciousness due to the law, which is the devil, okay? The moment you listen to the chatter, it gets louder. Once the chattering becomes a chorus, the power of the devil, it's all about you and all through you, okay? All of the invitations given to you will be invitations into darkness. And now the dark is very, very, very seductive. Okay? Very seductive. Many people go into the dark. You could say that as a culture, we've gone into the dark. North America and Western Europe, it started after World War II. And we've gone just into all the dark rabbit holes and all of the desacralization of the human being and its expression as an aspect of the divine, a conscious aspect of the divine. And I think we're coming out of this now. But as you go through the book, The Devil and Us, after the chapter I'm going through now, The Devil, as we get into the other chapters, I start to explain, what happened in the 20th century. A lot of it pivots off of 1947, which was an absolutely pivotal year for our descent into darkness. Everybody wants to go into the dark. Don't kid yourself, okay? Let's just look at young people. They go into darkness, and you could call it an exploratory mission. Now, one of the reasons the darkness is so seductive is most of the understanding of what's going on down here is in the darkness, okay? So people become seduced by it, and they want to understand things, and they go into the darkness. It's irresistible. The further you go into the darkness, the darker you become. Now, it's subtle at first. You don't even notice it, but it becomes more distinct. Then one day, without knowing when it started, the chatter has turned into a conversation. I'm going over where I left off in part 2. Okay? Now the devil speaks to you. And you know why? Because you've gone so far into the darkness, you can't find your way out. And the first thing the devil does is blind you. This is the purpose of the darkness. Okay? So you can't function in that world without the collaboration of the devil and the negative aligned beings and entities, and there's a lot of them. Okay. Now remember, you went in there voluntarily. Okay. You went in there voluntarily. There's, let me give you a real world example of this. Okay. There's a lot of people now immersed in this idea that the Jews control the world. And you ask yourself, well, how would that be possible? How could they possibly control the whole world? Yes, they're wealthy. Yes, they're intelligent. Yes, they're accomplished in science and literature and art and music and mathematics and statesmanship, and all of the roles a human being can play are aptly represented by Jewish people. But there's only 15 million of them on the planet. So how could they be controlling the world? Well, it's interesting to me that people say something like that out loud, because they really haven't thought about it. If there was any truth to it at all, it would be done through compromise. This would be Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein was a compromise artist. Okay, that was his role and function, and he was probably working for the Mossad. There's little doubt in my mind. Ghislaine Maxwell, the same. But why blame the Jews? Okay? For them to be successful at their mission, if they're the ones who offer the temptation, somebody has to accept the temptation for it to be valid and to become compromised. Okay? So if this theory that Jews control the world is true, then for every Jew in an influential position, they must have 1,000 Gentiles around them working in collaboration with them. I always use the example of the Bank of England and the fight for the throne between the Stuarts and Cromwell in the 1600s. Yes, there was Jewish influence there, but there were also Gentiles who entered into contract, took money, and were corrupted. Okay? So what controls the world, or what is degenerating the world? Don't blame the Jews. It's just simply immorality. It's just going in people voluntarily going into the darkness. Okay? So that kind of bothers me when people say that, because it's so ill thought out. Okay? And it also paints the entire Jewish population negatively, which is not true. Okay? So once you take the devil's hand, the chatter turns into a conversation, and then you realize what's going on. But it's too late. It's too late. If you keep going into the darkness from this point, you'll self-destruct. You activate the death wish within yourself, and it's within all of us. There's a death wish. Deep, very deep into the human consciousness, there is a death wish. Okay? We all have it. It's built into the body. It's a destroyer of sorts. Our own personal Shiva, if you will. The moment God invented time, destruction had to follow. Time is a lie. Always has been. Always has been a lie. There's no such thing as time. We only perceive time through the tick-tock of cellular decay and the limitation of a human life in the body. So time is delimited by the body. But spirit has no time. Spirit doesn't live in time. Soul does not live in time. The body lives in time. So if you're thinking about the end of something, you're thinking about the end of your body, but it's not the end of you. People talking a lot now about the end of the world, because our beloved Abrahamic scriptures have prophesied this. I assure you, The Creator can preserve all of us and create a new world for us. There's nothing really to worry about. Okay? All you really need to worry about is your relationship with the divine, your relationship with the light inside of you and the sound inside of you, and ultimately the creator inside of you, if you make it all the way. That's all you have to worry about. Everything else is just a distraction. Everything else is just a trap to gain your attention, and your intention carries with it a certain energetic component. Okay, a psychic energy. There's a psychic energy in human attention. It's very powerful. Other entities want it because it has much more power on the other side. We're much more powerful than we know. And we've been led to believe that we're sort of a weak and vulnerable and extremely incapable species, the human race, but it's not true. We're unbelievably powerful, or God working through us makes us unbelievably powerful. Okay? So the body is impermanent. It has destruction built into it. You know, there's a clock ticking in our cells, and there's a point at which the cells will stop to regenerate properly. Now, it's my understanding that there is there are therapies now to reverse age human beings, and they've been around for a number of decades. I think they came about in the 20th century. And this would come out of what we in the colloquial call the deep state or the shadow world, or this military, scientific, theological, and esoteric occult organization, which is in the world. It really exists. What name they call themselves, I don't know, but it absolutely exists. The evidence of it is everywhere. You may not see it yourself, but you can certainly see the footprints in the snow. Okay, so you have your evidence. Something was there. It's really in control of everything that's going on right now. Everything that is going on right now is as choreographed as a Broadway musical, and that includes the conflict in Israel and everything. It's all choreographed. Everything on this planet is choreographed. Okay. The devil wants to take you eternally into darkness, but he can't really do that. You do it to yourself. And the whole thing is an elaborate trick. Everywhere you go in this world, you go by your consent, you inform on yourself. Okay? Now, the negative principality wants the souls to stay here, wants the souls to keep incarnating, because it's the soul energy that sustains this reality. So when the devil is looking at you, or the negative principality is looking at you, he's looking at you the same way a nation state might look at 1 trillion cubic meters of natural gas off a shoreline. They want it, right? Or an oil deposit found somewhere. You're gonna begin to see military tension anywhere a very valuable and necessary commodity is discovered, whether it be diamonds, gold, or oil. You always see the sort of dark hand of this hidden governance in the world comes out. Okay. And for the devil, it's none of these things. That those are human ambitions to control. But for the devil, it's all about the soul. Now, the devil can't permanently trap you down here. Okay. It's just sooner or later, you're going to go back to God. It's the natural course. But how long you're down here and what happens to you down here is in direct relation to your commiseration with the darkness and what contracts you make with the darkness. Okay. And the whole thing, as I said, is an elaborate trick. Everywhere you go in this world, you go by consent. And at the end of the day, we inform on ourselves. We rat on ourselves. Okay? We are our own informers. Now, Lucifer is the firstborn of God and the morning star. And he never left God. That's a lie. Never left God. The fractured relationship is pure gossip. Nonsense. Okay? And it may sound like too fantastical to believe, You would say, well, Bruce, who would do that? Why would they do that? What would their motivation be? Because if you can control what people believe and what they believe is inaccurate, and a supernatural being is going to steal their soul, steal them, then you have a tremendous power through fear over those people. And that's why the devil was created by the Vatican in its present form. Same reason at the Council of Nicaea, they took reincarnation out of the teachings. So you take reincarnation out of the teachings, which softens the human experience a little bit. So yes, we're trying to do something. Yes, we may fail. Yes, we may go through suffering. We may go through deprivation. But in the reincarnation model, which is the accurate model, we're eventually going to get where we're going. Now, the taking out of reincarnation and the invention of the devil creates an incredible tension in the two religions that follow Judaism. Okay, it's really they're manipulations of the original Judaic teachings. Okay, now most of these teachings were given to us by extraterrestrials. People don't like to hear this. Okay, there's more and more people popping up. I did a video. Are are aliens demons? And the answer is no. Okay. So you're asking yourself which narrative circumscribes which narrative circles around and encloses the other narrative. Does the religious narrative circumscribe the ET narrative, and we're being manipulated and invaded by demons, and they're saying that they're extraterrestrials to distract us and to neutralize our spiritual guard, because most people would be curious about extraterrestrials. Most people would not be curious about demons and would stay away from them. So it's a trick, according to certain religious voices. Or does the extraterrestrial narrative circumscribe the religious narrative? And it's the latter. The extraterrestrial narrative circumscribes the religious narrative, in my opinion. Okay? And this is after quite a bit of research and meeting quite a number of people who have been deep, deep, deep into this world, including John Edmonds of Stardust Ranch. Okay? So the jurisdiction of Lucifer is mind. Mind. Okay? Very important to understand, and explains a lot about what's been happening in the 20th century. So we are fully living in a Luciferian society, because we value science, reason, rationality, control, and repeatable control of phenomenon to prove our point. Okay? You can't speak anymore unless you can prove something in public. Okay? And this is why all the big podcasts have these incredible physicists and mathematicians and quantum theorists and all of these sorts of things now, because they can prove what they're saying with calculus, but not really. It reaches a point where the calculus becomes as soluble as mythology. None of these theories are absolute. The theory of relativity, not even the theory of gravity. Theory of evolution is complete bunk. I'll debunk that one for you right now. Human consciousness manifests, okay? Whether you're conscious of it or not. So if you take a people habituated to a warm climate for 10,000 years, and their cellular structure and genetics have adapted for that warm climate, and you move them to the Arctic, if you were to do this, well, you'd have a bit of a die-off, because a lot of people wouldn't be able to survive the cold of the Arctic. But eventually what would happen is the structure of those bodies would change and maybe include more fat cells or various remedies for the cold. And it's the consciousness changing the body. You see, we're all doing miracles all the time. But the way Darwin, who was definitely associated with this group that is controlling the world, and a lot of the scientists and here's a little fun fact for you. Most people who receive Nobel Prizes end up joining an intelligence agency. They're contracted. MI6, CIA, Mossad, they join intelligence agencies. Why would all the Nobel laureates be joining intelligence agencies? Well, I'll leave you to figure that one out for yourself. Okay? So this idea that there's a fractured relationship between God and Lucifer is complete nonsense. Okay? The first concept of self we have is through thought. Okay? And according to the Bible, on the sixth day, we named everything. Okay? We named everything. God gave us that task. God didn't do that. He created everything according to Genesis, but mankind was left to name everything. Now, this individuation by species and personality and genus is all the jurisdiction of darkness, the domain of the devil or Lucifer, but in cooperation with God. Because you cannot have a reality below God without a negative principality, because everything is subject to entropy. Everything decays and goes away. There are even gods who die. Gods die all the time. We're not still worshiping the same gods that were worshipped 100,000 years ago on this planet. At least not to my knowledge. There may be certain sects that are still working with them, but generally no. So gods themselves die. They die, right? So the thought franchise was passed on to man, but that doesn't mean that the devil ever gave up the enterprise. God is being, the devil is thinking. Now, when thinking gets really corrupted, it becomes a chatter, and then it becomes a conversation, and then you're crazy. So insanity is the ultimate, or loss of sovereignty within your own body is the ultimate fate of somebody who goes too far into the darkness, who becomes too connected to these dark forces, okay? And they're allowed to do it. And there's a reason you went into the darkness, and there's a reason you didn't pull out, and there's a reason you are where you are. Don't ask for sympathy. It's another thing as well. This is a very important point for people to understand. Never feel sorry for people. When you understand energetically how everything works here, everybody brought what's in their life into their life. We may not see it, we may not understand it, but it is the reality. So sympathy and victim consciousness is about the most horrible state of consciousness a human being can enter into. Victim consciousness, okay? So nobody gets out of here without befriending the devil. You can't get out of here without befriending the devil. Now you think, boy, what a radical thing to say. Bruce is crazy. Well, Christ met the devil in the desert, didn't destroy him. Why didn't Christ destroy him? Okay, there is the Son of God, the most powerful being ever created. The devil visits him in the desert, and he doesn't destroy him while he's incarnate. Why? Because it's evidence that the devil has a right to exist and that the devil is a divine being. Then you go over to Buddhism. And the negative principality in Buddhism is a being named Marpa. Now, Buddha and Marpa became such good friends, they used to sit and talk for hours on a hill. But your pastor never taught you that, did he? And you see it again and again in other religions. In native mythology, you have the crow. And the crow is a kind of a trickster. Not really evil, but just a very powerful entity. Now, our interpretation of the negativity is the most severe and the most dire, and it was created in this way specifically to screw us over. Okay? It's mind control. That's what it is. Okay? So nobody gets out of here without befriending the devil, and that's why the story of the fall is complete nonsense. You don't confront the devil. He's not your enemy. You become aware of him. You enter into a meaningful dialogue. He's respectful and polite. All he ever did was offer entrance into a room, and you willingly entered. Inside that room, you found your identity. And the moment you did that, you entered into a contract with the devil. It's that simple. This is how the devil works. He offers us a choice, then waits for an answer. It's not a hard sell. We can go off and think about it, and our choice determines our action. The devil does not make us do anything. He lives by law, and his purpose is that of a gatekeeper, but not the gates of hell, more like the gates of experience. The devil doesn't judge. He's a test. Now we see it again in Christ's experience in the 40 days in the desert. And as I said, we see it when Buddha confronts Mara. Okay? Negative principality has many, many names. No society has left them unnamed, no matter how primitive or advanced. Loki, Crow, Lucifer, Mara, Satan, Shaitan, many more. Why would every society name a being that nobody has proof of meeting? Interesting question. Do you think it's some kind of collective consciousness experience? You think Satan is part of a pre-coded genetic disposition? The surfacing of our deepest unconscious fear? Seems unlikely we'd come up with such a defined hierarchy, whether it be the Hindu deities and demons or the underworld of King Solomon. There's a point way out there where you must be able to discern and ask yourself, what are they really talking about? What are they really talking about? You have to get a little bit of that Marcus Aurelius stoicism into you, you know? What is this thing just in and of itself? Okay. Now, in our mythos in the West, we have an eternal struggle between a sensitive God, a God who lives and feels, and an absolute destroyer, and nothing really in between. Now, this realm is a sincerity factory. We have to develop sincerity. Absent sincerity, nothing good can take root. Sincerity is the sun and rain of the inner world. Nothing grows without it. Unfortunately, we've become a very insincere people. You can't get anywhere good without sincerity. You have to know yourself. Devil keeps you in play in a game of half measures until you sincerely get tired of that game. And you can't judge other people for playing the game. It's their right in this free will experience on this planet. It's their right. Now, as you play with the devil's promptings, your returns are in half measure, requiring you to double down like in Las Vegas blackjack to get what you should have gotten the first time. As you double down, the devil continues to guide the process through offering choices. Your choices either take you deeper into darkness or bring you out of it. The devil refines you through a process of offering poor choices, and this allows for laws to come into play. He's a master of the law. Absolute. He is the law incarnate. Okay? The devil is law. Understand that. It's very important you understand that. Natural law. Okay? So in the realm of the divine, in the Brahman world, in the singular world, it's all just there's no judgment, there's no nothing, there's no good or evil, there's nothing. Okay? But to have experience of a temporary nature that ends like a human life, you have to have a negative principality because the negative principality ends things, controls the beginning and ending of reality in the dual worlds. This is how powerful the negative principality is. Very, very powerful being, appointed by the Creator. Okay. The devil's very spirit is the law in action. Nobody calls upon law more than the devil. Loves the letters. It's such a pretty language. Law that is pretty in its letters, but poison in its spirit. The devil lives by law allocated to him from God, the Father of all life, and the devil is doing God's work. True. A delegation from God to Lucifer. The devil is law and the law is energy. Energies have their own laws, and higher energies supersede lower energies. This devilish energy is just that, an energy that can be toyed with by the gods and physical beings like humans and others, and even higher dimensional beings. He keeps the insincere where they are. Otherwise, heaven would be impure. All energies have laws and intelligence to them. Since the field of energy we call the devil is here on earth, it can also reside inside us, around us, and in things. The devil's color is red, the same color as the root chakra, or sexual anchoring of the human body. Biology is the domain of the devil. Sex is the number one temptation given to us. Our root chakra gets lit up with an energy from outside of us. The energy can be from another person or from an energy or entity that can energize the root chakra. Dreams are infiltrated with people we know or knew. Sex is the invitation to the game. What we ignore about sex could fill a sports stadium. Sex moves everything now. Crypto, cars, lifestyles, clothes, even medicine. And it does it in such a way we can't even remember when it didn't. The pictures in our heads can come from many places. We can make the case that there's imagination based on biology. When a young boy goes through puberty, he's going to have more and more images of the female form in his imagination, in the place where pictures come into the head. Not only that, when he sees these pictures externalized in magazines or on the internet, then they'll immediately have a tremendous gravitas. And it's because he's gone through puberty and is now sexually awakened, and the inner and the outer are in synchronization. Okay? So the inner and the outer are always looking to connect with each other. And just take a simple example of being hungry, having a thought or an impulse or an imagining of what you want to eat, going there, buying the food and eating it, inner and outer tying off. This is the principle of life, the principle of mysticism. It's easy to understand when it's a simple biological impulse, but remember, it all goes through here. Nothing happens without going through here. You're not going to go to the Burger King drive-thru before imagining it or thinking about it, which is a form of imagining. Do you understand? And it's the same thing with everything. And this is why the deeper things, the deeper and purer energies inside us are harder to interpret. Love. Do I love her? Do I love him? I'm not quite sure. It's because it's a higher energy that doesn't necessarily have an image associated with it, but it's internal and it has to manifest externally. Okay? So not only are we sexually awakened in puberty, but that it's those teen years are the height of sexuality for a male. The male sexual peak is from 14 to 18. Okay? So the imagination is going to be dominated by women. Dominated, absolutely dominated. Makes sense, right? If you don't eat for 3 days because you're fasting, you'll find that the image of food in your imagination is crystal clear. Suddenly, imagination is more effective than it was when you were eating 3 meals a day and snacking in between. You can hold the image of a hamburger and fries in your mind so clearly you can practically smell it. And this is biology contributing to the imagination. Now, what can we deduce from this? Well, first and foremost, biology uses the imagination or hijacks the imagination might be the better way of saying it. From this, we can understand that the imagination is not above the fundamentals of what we are. We're a biological entity in our physicality. Our bodies come from this earth. We have the 7 orifices above the neck, like the mammalian class to which we're a part. Our imagination, which is much more acute than any other animal in nature, is not above the fundamentals of what we are. It's part of these fundamentals. Or a better way of saying this is that it can be used by these fundamentals. The imagination never quite seems to be ours. It comes with tremendous force and autonomy when there's a biological necessity. When we have a creative necessity and we try to deliberately use our imagination, it seems to run away. That's interesting. The human brain influences our imaginative potential. Neuroscientists suggest that the imagination is controlled by the prefrontal cortex. The brain also has something called the default mode network, and it's believed to play a role in spontaneous thoughts, daydreaming, and imaginative thinking. The default mode network has been observed to become active in brain research when tasks necessitate the creation of mental imagery or the contemplation of alternative outcomes. And then there's the internal pharmacy, the compendium of drugs the body produces to motivate. Dopamine is one that has been in the news quite a bit, and it's been suggested by many people that the abuse and exploitation of dopamine discharges is the basis of social media addiction. Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. Dopamine is associated with rewards and is known as the feel-good neurotransmitter. It's also been linked to creative thinking and the generation of novel ideas. It's been proven that dopamine levels influence imaginative thinking and problem solving. Serotonin is another naturally occurring drug within our brains and bodies. Evolutionary psychologists would have us believe that the imagination evolved for higher adaptation. Our ability to envisage alternative scenarios and future outcomes allowed us a significant advantage in survival and adaptation. Our brains probably evolved, according to these evolutionary psychologists, as a means to solve problems and navigate the immediate landscape. I think that's enough for today. We'll keep going with this. I'm Bruce McDonald. This has been The Devil Part 3. If you're at all interested in what's being discussed here, get yourself a copy of The Devil in Us, a memoir of you and me. It's up on Amazon.